What's up, A to Z Sports here live on a Tuesday. Gonna have a good show ranking Cam Ward's castmates from 10 to 1. Who are the most important teammates that Cam Ward has this season for the Tennessee Titans? We're gonna go 10 through 1. Ryan and I have not seen each other's lists. We have a couple conversations and questions that we're gonna hit up, checkpoints along the way as we reveal our Cam Ward cast member list. And Ryan's rocking something new today. For the first time, you are doing the mustache on the morning show. So you join a long list of people who have rocked a mustache on this morning show. So I have not done that in a long time. I don't even know if that counts as the same show. Like 2017, I rocked the mustache because I lost a bet with Zach. But we are going to see what this mustache experiment looks like here in summer 2025. So Ryan, welcome in. We're going to throw some shade after we do our Cam Ward teammate rankings. So let's get this thing off and rolling.
I'm excited for it, man. Yeah, I didn't know we were leading off with the mustache, but I was telling Austin before the show, for everybody out there, this is the first time in my 11 years with my wife that she said, hey, you can grow a mustache. You can give it a shot. So my wife is very anti-facial hair, so I was very surprised that she gave me the blessing here, but you guys are along for the journey. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to have people maybe rate this. Let's put some reviews on the mustache on the Google reviews. I don't know. We'll talk about it, obviously, as this thing continues to mature. But before we get into things today, folks, don't forget, share the show. As always, if you're watching live on Facebook, hit that share button or after the fact and get it on it's the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Get it out on your feed. If you're watching live on YouTube, take that YouTube link and send it to a friend in your life or one of your favorite group chats, or as we talked before, an enemy in your life too. As long as they like the show, that's all that matters. Just find that Titans fan that you know and let them know that A to Z Sports is live and talking Supportcast for rookie quarterback Cam Ward. You can also repost us on Twitter or X to help spread the word. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and leave a like on the show before we get going here on a wonderful Tuesday morning.
Yep, let's do it officially. Welcome into A to Z Sports here live on a Tuesday. I'm Austin Stanley. He is Ryan Roberts of A to Z Sports Film Room. We're in Nashville's on-demand sports talk network, going live weekday mornings at 8 Central Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Links to the show segment by segment on our Twitter X timeline. Hit us up on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more great Titans content. Leave us a 5-star Google review. That goes a long way for us. And if I see them the morning of the show, then I will read them, like Tucker. A to Z Sports is a daily listen for me. Just started getting more into the Titans content, and this podcast is my favorite Titans journalism outlet I've come across. Keep up the good work, boys. Tighten up. So shout out to Tucker on that 5-star Google review yesterday. So gotta thank our sponsors. They make it happen for us, and they help out all of you. Wilson County Hyundai, make them a part of your new car buying process, seen in Lebanon or online, wilsoncountyhyundai.com. The Bone and Joint Institute, boneandjointtn.org, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care, and Barton Drury Insurance Group, customized solutions for all of your insurance needs. They are also local. They're Titans fans, big sports guys there, and online at bartondrury.com. So, we can figure out how we want to rank the mustache, if we want to, do a 1 through 10, if we want to put like a Brent Selleck to whoever, like we can put like faces to it. That's super subjective for the
Tom
mustache
Selleck?
rankings, but yeah. So
yeah.
I said Brent Selleck. It's former Eagles tight end.
Yes.
Not who I was thinking of. Tom Selleck is the mustache guy. So that just tells you where my brain is at this morning. So, all right. So Ryan, we were texting yesterday about, all right, what's our topic? Because on June 17th, there is no automatic topic. There's no obvious talking point to hit on really with any NFL team, most NFL teams. There are some storylines out there. Bengals doing some weird stuff constantly and not doing things that others, do. But with the Titans, it was, let's rank Cam Ward's teammates from an importance level. Because I think this is interesting because of there's draft capital been used on this offense. There's also a lot of free agent money spent on this offense. There's weapons. There's obviously protection. There's question marks on all sides of this offense as well. I mean, it was the worst team in football last year. So when we talk, I guess, why did this jump off the screen of our text thread yesterday, where we had a handful of topics that we'll get to throughout the next couple of weeks? Why did you think this one caught your eye for today?
Because I think that obviously people want to constantly hear about Cam Ward and how he's doing and what to expect from him as a rookie and for the foreseeable future. But I think one thing that we don't talk enough about, Austin, is in the NFL draft space and just the developmental space of being a good quarterback in the NFL. You can tell a lot of if a player is going to be successful or not successful very early on in his career, because typically they go to stable franchises that puts support around them, proper support. So I think this conversation is very interesting because, one, we'll be able to go a little bit more in depth as far as what that supporting cast does look like for Cam Ward and the importance of each player in his developmental track as a young quarterback. And also, I think it shows not only where the Tennessee Titans have done a really good job so far of supports, it'll also show, hey, maybe that needs to be a little bit better. Maybe next offseason, after hopefully a better year this year, maybe that's the next step. When we're talking about mock drafts, we're talking about free agency, we're talking about the long-term development of this roster. I think we can start that whole conversation. And then also, I think it becomes a really fascinating conversation. Maybe I only think it's fascinating because I'm a little bit of a football nerd in this sense, but like I love just a little bit. I love the debate over pass protection versus pass catcher versus run game versus passing offense. Like I love those debates of what is the most important supports that you could possibly put around a young quarterback. And I think we're all going to have all those conversation points intertwined into one single conversation today.
Yeah. And Brian Callahan was a part of maybe one of the biggest wide receiver versus O-line conversations of the draft in modern day with Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase for Cincinnati. I mean, did they pick correctly? Because they got to a Super Bowl, then they've gone backwards every year since for many different reasons. Jamar Chase, arguably top 2-3 receiver in the NFL, alongside his LSU running mate Justin Jefferson in Minnesota, and Penei Sewell and the Lions got exactly what they wanted and have made their way and changed that franchise. So everybody won in kind of a way, but the Bengals offensive line is still a concern. So I think that's a good way to think about this is protection versus weapons, run game versus pass game. All those things kind of go into this. And so when we have 10 guys to pick from, we're going to start at 10, go 10 through 6, and then we're going to get some of your guys' opinions on this too. And so curious overall of Ryan, where you're going to start. So I will let you start. Do you want to do all 5? You want to do 1?
10 through 6?
You want to do 10 through 6? You want to do all 5 or you want to do one at a time?
We'll rattle them off real quick. We'll rattle them off. Maybe just a little.
6.
Yeah, let's do 10 through 6. Number 10 for me of the most important supporting cast for Cam Ward entering 2025. Number 10, Tyjae Spears, running back, kind of in a 2-back approach in the backfield as far as lead back. Number 9, I have Chig Okonkwo, the tight end in a contract year that we've talked a ton about, potential safety blanket to the middle of the field. Peter Skoronski, number 8, starting guard, expected to take a nice year 3 leap. Number 7, I have Tyler Lockett, obviously the wide receiver acquisition from the Seattle Seahawks. Somebody has to be wide receiver 2, Austin, and that is I think he's the easiest evaluation of potential wide receiver 2, at least for 2025. And then number 6, I have Kevin Zeitler, obviously the guard addition this offseason to be the veteran voice in that room up front for the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, so 10 through 6, you go Tyjae, Chig, Skoronski, Lockett, and Zeitler.
Correct. That is it.
Okay. So you have 2 guys on your 10 through 6 that I don't have in my top 10.
Love it. Okay.
So that's the whole point here is what we got going on here. So Ryan's 10 through 6, Tyjae Spears, Chig Okonkwo, Peter Skoronski, Tyler Lockett, and Kevin Zeitler. So both guards, a pass catcher, and a tight end and a running back. So my number 10 is rookie wide receiver Alec Iomanner. I think Alec Iomanner is arguably going to become wide receiver 2. And I think his rapport with Cam Early is a building block, a foundational spot for the Titans in the now and in the future. And so I think Alec Iomanner is my number 10. Number 9, I go another rookie, Gunnar Helm, number 9 for me. And I think Gunnar Helm is a safety blanket, knows where to be, knows how to help bail your quarterback out. And I think early on, we've seen Gunnar Helm surprise and be around and be available for playmaking. So I have Gunnar Helm at number 9. At number 8, I have the starting tight end, Chigakonkwo. At number 7, I have Peter Skoronski, one notch higher than you have Skoronski. And we both have Kevin Zeitler at 6.
Okay. So again, Io Manor, you had Helm, you had Okonkwo, Skoronski, and again, this is in ascending order, so we're working up on
10
this
through
list.
6, yes.
Yep, Skoronski at number 7, and then you had Kevin Zeitler at number 6. That's what you had. Okay.
So Titans Kyle says both guards being on there are crazy, and says for O line I'd have both. I've had 3, both tackles and Kush. We're doing top 10, so like,
yeah.
If you just have 3 offensive linemen, then you got 7 skill players in your top 10, Titans Kyle, which Roger says 2 tight ends, Austin. Yeah, 2 tight ends.
So you envision a lot of so my question is for that 2 tight end mention, because Gunnar Helm is not on my list, not to let the cat out of the bag here too early, but he did not make the top 5 on this list for me. Yeah. Gunnar Helm making the list. Do you envision a lot of 2 tight end sets, or do you envision at some point maybe Gunnar Helm takes over as tight end 1, and that's why he's on the list? I'm just look for what's the vision.
It's fair. I think it's I went with like, who do I trust? Because this is like this is importance rankings, right? So who do I trust more? Do I trust, like, for the longevity of the season, to be there for Cam Ward? Do I trust the second tight end or another one of these receivers that I'm not entirely sure how they play out? So that's where I went with Helm instead of another receiver option.
It's interesting. I mean, I could see a world. This is why this is such an interesting conversation, because I could see a world. I could envision it. And I'm wondering if anybody else out there can see this as well. Chig in a contract year. I think most people were expecting potentially his best season, hopefully, with the Tennessee Titans with a young quarterback and that safety valve type of role, maybe hurting the seam a little bit. But like, there is also a world where Gunnar Helm is just better than Chigakonkwo at some point this year, and he becomes tight end 1. Like, I mean, that world does exist, right? Like, those realities can be of the same. So it's going to be very interesting. Gunnar Helm was like, so I wrote down a couple guys as like, if I want to call him like honorable mention, I can call him honorable mention. Like, I didn't have Io Manor on there for one, right? Like, he's a guy that would be an honorable mention for me. Gunnar Helm would be on the honorable mention for me. So there were a couple guys that are just missed the list. Like, I could understand why you would want them on the list. I guess for like those younger guys, it's a little bit tough for me to project like what exactly is their role in 2025, which is why I just had trouble fitting on the list for me personally,
Yes. Steven says Gunnar Helm being on the list means he dethroned Chig. I mean, maybe. I think Chig is their movement tight end. Helm is going to be their end of line tight end. I think Gunnar Helm really quickly can unseat Josh Wiley as the end of line tight end. I think Gunnar Helm is going to be a chess piece you can use quite a bit overall.
Could you see a world where both guys have 30 plus catches as a tandem next year?
Sure. I just think
right?
It's hard to predict production because of how inefficient they were a year ago. But you still had a 1,000-yard rush and a 1,000-yard receiver. So Eric asked the question, does it have to be players? How about OC and QB coach? We're doing teammates, and we're doing offensive players. So we're doing top 10 offensive players, 10 through 1 in level of importance. So just to recap, Ryan's 10 through 6, 10 Tyjae Spears, 9 Chigakonkwo, 8 Peter Skoronski, 7 Tyler Lockett, and 6 Kevin Zeitler. And I have on my 10 through 6, I've got Alec Io Manor at 10, Gunnar Helm at 9, 8 Chigakonkwo, 7 Peter Skoronski, and 6 Kevin Zeitler. So we have both guards on that back half of the top 10. And both have Chigakonkwo in the back half of that top 10 as well. So let's ask this question, get the audience more involved here. Who's the most underrated asset for Cam Ward on this roster? Who is the most underrated asset for Cam Ward on this Titans roster? I think it's an interesting question that Ryan came up with this morning. So we'll send you guys to the chat. Send Ryan in the chat. Most underrated asset for Cam Ward on the roster. But first, I'm going to tell you guys about Lipscomb University Sports Analytics Program. There's so many different ways you can make sports media, sports content your career. There's no correct, I guess there's no wrong way. There's many correct ways. One of the correct paths could be getting a degree from Lipscomb University Sports Analytics Program. Lipscomb University is nationally recognized, located here in Nashville, Tennessee, but you don't have to be in Nashville to take advantage of this sports analytics program. You could be outside of Philadelphia, near Jersey, where Ryan's at, to take advantage of this. It's all online graduate program there. So how can you make your passion for sports into a revenue income generating career? Lipscomb University can help you out. One of the few colleges across the country who are on the forefront of this style of program. So check them out. Lipscomb University Sports Analytics Program, to turn that passion into a career with Lipscomb University.
Whether you are watching us live on YouTube, on Facebook, or you're a Twitcher, you can hit that like button to make sure to support the show. On YouTube, obviously, make sure that you hit the subscribe button to know when we have a show coming up. Make sure to like the show as we continue talking Cam Ward supporting cast the rest of today.
All right, who's the most underrated asset for Cam Ward on this roster? I'm curious to see what the chat's going to say. What are you seeing so far on Facebook and YouTube?
Yeah, so Roz had an early one where he said Tony Pollard or Tyjae Spears. Titan Kyle also said Tyjae Spears, so a couple running backs early on in the conversation. Xavier Restrepo mentions from OO to Great, and we had Titans Up who also agreed Xavier Restrepo. Eric Castillo says Bryce Oliver. Tall Texan says Lloyd Cushenberry, most important for a rookie. We had an Io Manor or Restrepo from Assad. Cushenberry again from Jason Martinez. We had Chris who said
underrated here. Underrated asset. Yeah. You guys are going Lloyd Cushenberry?
Lloyd is not underrated on my list. I can tell you that very much. So yes. Dan Moore is Yori. Cause I mean, like, again, we'll have this conversation, I think, in this second section of the show, but center quarterback, I think that is such a heavily talked about conversation. And I think that, yes, Lloyd is very, very important. And if him getting back healthy is very, very important for.
Jay says, without a doubt, Cushenberry, since he's been hurt, I haven't talked about him much. Like, okay, I mean, I guess just because he's been out of sight, out of mind for the most part, but come on.
Sure.
Yeah. Lloyd Cushenberry, there's no underrated in his importance for this offense.
Well, we had Yuri that said Dan Moore Jr. as a left tackle there. Tyler Lockett from Jeff. It's interesting. Tyler Lockett is the old head on the one of the old heads on the roster, and I do think that he is pretty underrated because people don't talk about him too much because he's just kind of the second wide receiver potentially, right?
Okay, spoiler alert: Tyler Lockett's not in my top 10.
Yeah, well, I assumed when you said Alec,
I've got Io Manor and Gunnar Helm, two rookies in my top 10 list. Not Tyler Lockett. So I guess for you, what made Lockett make your spot? You watch the NFL and the sport from a more national viewpoint than I do, and so I know Tyler Lockett from K-State days. I know what he did early on in Seattle. I haven't paid attention much to the Seattle Seahawks in a couple of years, even with Geno Smith doing a thing or two the last couple seasons as well. But I know he's dropped off. But what he is, you still think Tyler Lockett can go out there and play?
In a secondary role, yeah, absolutely. I think. He's clearly on the back end of his career, obviously, right, from the age perspective. But when I think of this roster right now, it's possible that Alec Manor turns out to be the wide receiver 2 in this offense. But if I'm looking just for 2025, if you ask me who's the most likely to be the second wide receiver behind Calvin Ridley, I would personally just right now say Tyler Lockett as long as he's healthy. I think that the veteran side, obviously, he's been there, done that. And ultimately, I think that we underrate a little bit just from a general public perspective. Having a guy that's going to be in the right spot in the right time matters. Like that stuff does matter. I mean, there's going to be reps where Ellick and you can throw DK and some of these younger wide receivers in there, even Xavier Restrepo, even though he knows Cam Ward. There's going to be some plays though where they're just not in the right spot because they haven't played enough football. Like they're just going to be in the wrong spot. They didn't read zone well enough and you didn't settle down, and like all those things are going to happen. I think I just trust Tyler Lockett to be in the right spot more. And ultimately, when he was at Seattle for a long stretch there, he was one of the more efficient wide receivers in the NFL, like per yards per catch, catch percentage, like all those types of things. So I just happen to think that if there's a player that ends up being like a sneaky safety blanket for Cam Ward in this wide receiver room, I think it ultimately could be Tyler Lockett. So that's why I think that he's a very important and dependable option outside of Calvin Ridley in this passing offense.
All right. So would he be your most underrated asset? I mean, you have him.
He's not. Yeah.
You have him at number 7.
Yep.
Go ahead.
My most underrated asset, who actually I haven't even talked about him on the list yet, and we'll talk about him in a second, I guess, but I'll expand about him a little bit. I think Tony Pollard is the most underrated asset on this roster. Like, because he was banged up last year, he's a veteran. We haven't talked about him a ton. At least I haven't talked about him a ton on this show because like he's a known commodity. But I think that one thing that we don't talk about enough is pass blocking is very important for a young quarterback. Protection is very important. Pass receivers are very important. But a run game is so important for a young quarterback to lean on. And I think if there is a guy that has a surprising season after Tony Pollard was banged up last year, if he had 1,000 yards rushing and was able to stay more healthy this year and had just kind of a comeback season, right? Like a little bit of a comeback player of the year in terms of like just the Tennessee Titans, I think that would be incredibly beneficial. So I think that Tony Pollard can end up being a really undervalued asset on this roster that we're not talking about enough.
Yeah. So when I was at minicamp Wednesday last week, it was after practice, just kind of paint a picture. The media is waiting at the pavilion-ish, which is intercepting players walking off the field towards the locker room to get scrum, quick conversations. And so Cam Ward and most of the skill players were like on the far side of the field doing some routes and drills and throwing the ball for about 20, 30 minutes after practice. And so you're kind of looking, you're kind of watching. They don't have their jerseys on anymore. So you're kind of like trying to figure out who's who and who's getting the most work with Cam. And then I see this guy walking like across towards like the weight room. And this dude looks like rocked up. I'm like, damn, who is that? And he's like 60, 70 yards away from me. I'm like, damn, who is that? And I'm like, oh, damn, that's Tony Pollard. I was like, okay. Tony's been doing some work Ryan's gone. So Tony's been doing some work this season. So we'll see if Ryan gets back here or not. I don't know what happened, if he just pushed the wrong button or not, but Ryan Roberts hopefully will be back. But so yeah, Tony Pollard, I think, we'll talk about Tony Pollard once we get to our top 5 here momentarily if Ryan jumps back in. So my most underrated asset for me is Gunnar Helm. And I talked about him earlier as Ryan's about to jump back in here. Right, there you go.
That was bizarre. That was bizarre. It wasn't my internet. Literally my tab at top just closed and it said all snap. You ever get like the all snap? That's what just happened to my window. So nice. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I thought Austin said rocked up and Ryan ducked. No.
Well, no, I was really like, I was listening so intently about you talking about Tony Pollard being rocked up. Like I was enjoying the conversation.
Lord. Yeah. I was like,
I hated the conversation. I just closed the tab because I hated Tony Pollard so much. Yeah.
No, but Tony looks the part. Tony's been doing some work this offseason. So, my underrated asset was Gunnar Helm. And I kind of talked about that, through my explanation of him making this top 10 ranking, where I don't think most would have Helm yet on this top 10 ranking. I just think he knows how to play football. I think he knows how to play the tight end position. The tight end position is one of the more mentally complicated and physically complicated positions in the NFL for a rookie to come in and play. But I think Gunnar Helm's just different in the way he's approached things. I think, and I said this after rookie minicamp, all of these guys in this rookie draft class that we've talked to so far are the most mature rookies that I've ever been around. Like that starts at Cam Ward. It goes to Femi. Kevin Winston hasn't talked much because he's still rehabbing. But the 3 4th round guys, they all speak like they have ridiculously high levels of life experience. And I'm like, you guys just got out of college. Like you are rookies. But like the way Gunnar Helm talks about why he didn't transfer, the way DK talked about his leadership, Alec talked about things that he sacrificed to move from Canada to get to positioning himself to get recruited, and all these. I'm like, you three guys, those 3 4th round people are super impressive. Absolutely. And I think so. That's why Gunnar Helm makes the list. Yep. And I think because he's a tight end and he's got more middle of the field opportunity, I think that's why I have Gunnar Helm ranked 1 spot ahead of Alec Iomander.
I think if Gunnar Helm didn't twist his ankle while he was running his 40-yard dash, he may have went top 75 in this past draft. Like I think that's going to end up being one of the big value plays for Tennessee just in general from just a 2025 NFL draft perspective. Because, I mean, we don't talk about the fact that he led Texas in receiving last year. You know, a team that had he had more receptions than Matthew Golden. Like, he had more receptions than Matthew Golden. Isaiah Bond, before his off the field stuff, was a guy that was pretty well thought about in league circles as far as like upside and potential. And yet Gunnar Helm was the number 1 total reception guy for the Longhorns last year. So yeah, I mean, again, if Gunnar Helm ends up being tight end 1 by the end of the year, I wouldn't be shocked about it. I said it earlier in the show. I think he's a more, while Chig will have more flash plays, right? The occasional play after the catch or busting the seam, Gunnar Helm is going to be a lot more dependable, I think, even as a rookie. Like, he's got that bigger body. He's more physical. Like, he can do all those types of things. I think that projects to being a very valuable commodity potentially for this offense if he can pick it up fast enough.
Yeah, 100%. So I left Tajay off my top 10. I left Tyler Lockett off my top 10. I'm guessing the 2 swaps. I think we're going to have the same 5 people in the top 5. I'm curious about the order. We'll get to in a second. But I'm guessing the 2 people that we both have interchangeable are Tajay and Lockett for you, and the 2 rookies for me, Iomander and Helm, at the back half of that list. All right, so let's get to our top 5 most important Titans teammates for Cam Ward. Drum roll, please. Okay. Let's go number 5. We're going to go back and forth now, right?
Yep.
We're going to go back and forth, 1 for 1. Brian, who is your 5th most important Titan teammate for Cam Ward this season?
Well, we just talked about it with the underrated asset. I think it's Tony Pollard at number 5 for me. You just talked about him obviously looking like he's in very good shape this offseason. I think this run game in general needs to be better than it was last year. And I think if it is, it's because Tony Pollard was healthier and this offensive line improved. And we'll get to a couple of the offensive linemen here, obviously, in a couple minutes. But I really do think that Tony Pollard, if he is the best version of himself, makes this offense a whole lot better and makes things a whole lot easier for Cam Ward. So Tony Pollard, number 5.
I also have Tony Pollard, number 5.
There it is. There it is.
Okay. Yep. And, you know, I'll save my thought for later on. I'll just throw it in there. Mm-hmm. The Titans surprisingly have a fairly impressive offensive roster.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't expect it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything has to work, right? Like,
sure.
Gunnar Helm has to be what I'm talking about. Tyler Lockett has to be what you're talking about. Alec Iomander and Tajay Spears and Chig Okonkwo, the 2 guards, have to be good. I think we trust Tony Pollard to show up every day. And so that's why Tony Pollard's absolutely top 5 in this list. And we both have him at number 5. Okay. Number 4, most important teammate to Cam Ward this year is who?
Number 4 for me is J.C. Latham, the star right tackle. I would have had J.C. a little bit higher on this list because I think he has the potential of being the best offensive lineman overall. But we're going to have a deeper conversation of the importance of right tackle versus left tackle versus center. Like, those debates are going to continue to rage on. I do think that JC has the potential to be the best offensive lineman on this team, but I do think the position he plays maybe just is slightly less important than a couple others. So JC Latham, number 4, starting right tackle.
Okay. So. I have number 4, Dan Moore, the left tackle.
Okay.
I think we're about to split hairs here.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
I think why I'll just jump ahead. I've got JC at 3, right? So sure. Because you have JC at 4, I've got Dan Moore. I've got Dan Moore at 4. I've got JC at 3.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, Nick Holtz, I believe it was, said that J.C. Latham has been their best offensive lineman this offseason. Now, that's with Lloyd Cushenberry rehabbing his Achilles.
Sure.
So maybe he is the one that's – look, but they spent the 7th overall pick on him. He's the one who transformed his body. He's flipping back from left to right where he made himself a top 10 pick in his college career at Alabama. So I think J.C. Latham gets the nod over Dan Moore for me because I just think he's a better, higher ceiling player than Dan Moore. And so left versus right is true, but if you've watched the Titans the last 3 seasons, it doesn't matter which side of the O-line the saloon door is on because they've had them on both at times. And so I think the splitting hairs part of this conversation happens now. I had J.C. Latham above Dan Moore in importance level. I also just think JC is just – I know JC's personality. From what I can tell about Dan Moore's personality, he's more even-keeled. I think he is a leader type, but I think he's a show up and do your work and don't really talk about it. JC is an energy guy too, which I think this team still needs. So
sure.
That's why I had JC over Dan Moore.
So the differentiator between Moore and Latham, and here's a fun one, right? Here's the fun conversation. I actually have Dan Moore Jr. at number 2. So he was not number 3. This was not a move one spot type of conversation. I had Dan Moore Jr. at number 2, and here's why. When I say the most importance for this team going into 2025, my thought process went, and I'm curious if anybody else went, or if you can subscribe to this thought process. I feel like even though he is a 2nd-year player and he's moving from left tackle to right tackle, I feel like I know what I'm going to get out of J.C. Latham a whole lot more than what I'm going to get out of Dan Moore Jr. And that sounds so weird because Dan Moore Jr. has been playing in the NFL longer and has played a lot more snaps, yet I see the contract that the Tennessee Titans signed him to, and I have a thought of, I didn't really love him with Pittsburgh. And either he's going to be a guy that you're just like regretting that you signed him to that crazy contract, or he's going to pleasantly surprise you. And I think that I think it's going to be one of those two extremes though. I don't see him just being like, okay, like either he's going to be not very good, or I think he's going to be better than expected. Like those are the two realities most likely for Dan Moore Jr. in my opinion. And I think he's most important because I think he's a little bit of the wild card here of the offensive line. Like I think I know what I'm going to get from Kevin Zeitler. I think I know what I'm going to get from J.C. Latham for the most part. If Lloyd Cushenberry's healthy, I think I'm going to know what I'm going to get. Funny enough is Skoronski was number 8 for me. I think he's got a little bit of volatility. Like either he's going to be like struggling, kind of what we've seen, or he's going to be really good and take a massive step forward. I think that those things could happen. But Dan Moore actually was a little bit higher on my list because I think him overplaying my perception of him as a player is the most potentially beneficial to Cam Ward in the 2025 season. So if he becomes a good starting left tackle or plus starting left tackle in the NFL, I think that goes a long way to solidifying this position. And ultimately, a quarterback, things are going to be moving fast. His eyes are going to be going all over the place. I don't want him to have to worry about the things that he can't see and that quintessential blindside responsibility. I do worry a little bit about that. So I think this is like a hopeful ranking because if he becomes the number 2 most important player in this roster, that means that he's probably better than what we think he is or what he has been.
I'm trying to unpack what I think your thought process is. You have J.C. Latham lower than Dan Moore because you trust J.C. more, and you are more curious about the questions that you have about Dan Moore, making Dan Moore's outcome more important.
Yeah. And I think when you combine that, I think that you surmised that well. But when you combine that also with one playing left tackle versus one playing right tackle, I think that all those things together, I think that Dan Moore becomes a more important player for this offense if he's able to be better than I think the perception is out there.
Yeah, there's some potential like Cam Ward pun or Cam Ward like one-liner. You can say that when you don't want Cam Ward worried about what he can't see, and Cam's tries like I can't control what I can't see, so I'm going to focus on what I can see. He didn't say something like hard like that, and everybody's like, "Damn, that was good." but so I like. They're both very important. I've got JC at 3, Dan Moore at 4. I also thought it was interesting. I saw Titans Kyle saying, funny because I think Dan Moore is just going to be okay. You think it's kind of like opposite ends of the extremes. for Dan Moore. And honestly, and this is kind of a sidebar inside of this O-line conversation, is there a middle class of offensive line? Is it just like if you are good, you're good. If you're not good or average, you're probably bad. Like
you know what's funny is I think the position he plays makes no middle ground for the
correct.
most part. Left
You're
tackle is one of those
whooped
spots. Yep,
or you're
100%.
solid.
Yep.
And
like Zeitler at right guard. I think that there's more realities at right guard than there is at left tackle. Like I think that you can be a great guard at right guard. I think you could be a bad guard. I think you could be a lot of different levels of okay or good, you know, but like left tackle, either you're good or you're not. I think a lot of the time, I think there's a lot more volatility there. 100%.
Yeah, I think you're either a liability or an asset.
Yeah.
And it's binary. I don't think there's any middle ground on that. And I think somebody brought up Dan Moore is solid until he plays top pass rushers. I'm trying to find that particular comment because I wanted to give Ken. Moore is good until he plays a top pass rusher. I mean, you're coming from the AFC North where you've got Trey Hendrickson twice and Myles Garrett twice.
Yeah.
And so, not the easiest slate of games that you got to play. And the Ravens are just going to throw all the different types of smoke at you anyway. So you've got a high level of difficulty for a left tackle in that division. You do hear like Will Anderson, very good in Houston. I guess that would be Josh Hines Allen in Jacksonville but he is not on the level of I don't think the
not
AFC North guys.
Yeah, no, he's not that.
And the Colts don't have that guy either.
Trey Hendrickson's had like 34 sacks over the last 2 years, and Myles Garrett's maybe the best defensive player in the NFL, right? So, I think that those guys are on a little bit of a higher tier overall than that. And I honestly hated that because, again, not a Tennessee Titans fan, right, for a second. When Dan Moore was signed, I admittedly didn't love the contract for obvious reasons, but I hated, there were some people that were clowning on him saying like, oh, Myles Garrett's son. I'm just like, guys, not playing well against Myles Garrett is 99% of the NFL. Like, why are we doing that? You know what I mean? Like, I hate that. That shade is just, it doesn't make any sense to me.
And really, really good players get their ass kicked by Myles Garrett every week.
It's like John Runyon when he was on the Eagles. Like he used to suck against Strahan, but he would dominate everybody else. It's like, yeah, Strahan's a Hall of Famer. Like stuff happens, dude. Like what are we doing here?
Exactly. All right, so we've kind of gone through. You've jumped ahead and said you have Dan Moore second, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna update your my running scoreboard for you. So you got JC at 4. We both to reset here because Vanessa walked in and said, "Hey, what did I miss?" All right, so we're ranking our top 10 Cam Ward, top 10 most important teammates for Cam Ward this season. I'll go through Ryan's list thus far. 10, Tyjae Spears, 9, Chig Okonkwo, 8, Peter Skoronski, 7, Tyler Lockett, 6, Kevin Zeitler, 5, Tony Pollard, 4, J.C. Latham. We know Dan Moore is 2.
Yes.
We don't know who 3 is. My list to this point, 10, Alec Iomanner, 9, Gunnar Helm, 8, Chig Okonkwo, 7, Peter Skoronski, 6, Kevin Zeitler, 5, Tony Pollard, 4, Dan Moore, and I have JC at 3. So we're missing Ryan's number 3 and number 1, and my number 2 and number 1. And it can only be 2 different people. So one of us has
unless it's a wild card. I threw it like backup.
Calvin Ridley and Lloyd Cushenberry are the 2 guys left on the board that have not been placed yet.
Yes.
They're either top 2 for me. They're both top 2 for me. Which order? One's number 1 for you. One's number 3 for you. Ryan, who is your number 1 most important teammate for Cam Ward this season?
Calvin Ridley, number 1 for me. Number 1 wide receiver. He is. We have a lot of questions of secondary pass catchers on this team. Is Tyler Lockett the number 2? Can Alec Iomanner, be that dude as a rookie? Can DK give you anything? Is Van Jefferson making an impact in this wide receiver room? Can Chig Okonkwo have a breakout final year on his contract for the Tennessee Titans? Can Gunnar Helm supplant him at some point? There's a lot of questions of secondary or I don't even know what that word is. Secondary pass catchers.
Yeah.
But one commodity that we know is that Calvin Ridley is, when healthy, a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL, and he is your number one receiver. There's no doubts about that. Now, the only question about Calvin Ridley is Calvin Ridley kind of what he was last year, where he's pretty good, right? Like he's a 1,000-yard receiver. He's a pretty good player. But we have seen at times in his career where it looks like Calvin Ridley could be one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. So there is a little bit of separation between what we know of Calvin Ridley and what I still think that he can be, because he's still a relatively younger guy for the amount of time he's played, because he came in the NFL, as a true junior.
He came in old though. Like that's the weird thing about Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
He was an old rookie, but he's like his joke was, I'm 29, but I feel 26, I think he said last year. So he's over 30, but his years served are lower, especially because he got suspended too.
Yeah. So his years, and he's, been banged up at times in his career. So I still think there's a developmental track for Calvin Ridley to being one of the better wide receivers in the NFL, at least on a short-term perspective. So I think that number one wide receiver, your best friends for a young quarterback, like there's going to be times, right or wrong, and mostly wrong probably, but there's going to be times where Cam Ward just defers to Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's out there somewhere. Like I'm going to make it happen. Right. And I think that his presence in this offense is so important because he is the one very well-known commodity comparatively to a bunch of the question marks that exist outside of wide receiver one in this offense.
Yeah. I also have Calvin Ridley number one. I've got Lloyd Cushenberry number two, and you've got Cushenberry number three, right? I think I'll come back to Ridley in a second. The reason why I have Ridley and Cushenberry 1 and 2, I think the Titans view it that way as well, because they've talked about how they've reworked their locker room. Normally, they have their locker room in position groups. Quarterbacks are here, usually separated from most of the team. And you've got every position group gets this little pocket or side corner of the locker room. They don't have that right now. They're all kind of jumbled up. So you got Cam Ward's locker. To one side, you have Calvin Ridley. To the other side, you got Lloyd Cushenberry. And whenever you hear Cam Ward talk, in like the 4 or 5 times he's talked to the media as a Titans quarterback after the draft, he's mentioned 2 players just about every time: Rid and Lloyd, Cushenberry and Rid. And so I think it's those 2 guys are who he's going to lean on the most, who he's going to have success with the most. I think I agree with you. Like, obviously, Tony Pollard's going to touch the ball more than Calvin Ridley, but you're talking about like quarterback center exchange and his go-to target. Like, boom, it's all about that. And I think Easton and I talked about this last week. How far away is Calvin Ridley from a top 10 receiver? Like 150, 160 yards?
Yeah. That's my point.
200 yards?
And look, he had 1,000 yards last year despite Will Levis not being very good and also playing some games without Will Levis, right? So like the quarterback room wasn't good, obviously, and he still had 1,000 yards. And, we can have the conversation of like meaningless stats and all that type of stuff. And I think I talked about this on the show before. I don't remember if I was you, but it's like, I even forget what the conversation point came, but like, remember when Kevin Love was on the Minnesota Timberwolves and everyone thought he was like a top 5 player in the NBA because of all the numbers he used to put up, but it's in reality, it's like you're the only guy in that room, which is why you're putting up these numbers. Like those conversations happen, obviously, as far as like the validity of stats, but Calvin Ridley, when he is healthy and on the field and in the groove, is one of the easier separators in the NFL and one of the better he gets open. Like he ultimately does, man. He's incredibly athletic. He's a really good route runner when he's locked in. Like all those things, I do think parlay to being an easy target for Cam Ward, especially early on. But yeah, last year he was a pretty good wide receiver. But I do think there's a level up that Calvin Ridley can still be had with the Tennessee Titans. And I'm excited to see if he does because, you have a more talented thrower at the quarterback position right now. You have a more talented passer and a more high upside passer. So, could Calvin Ridley have his best year in the NFL this year? It's possible. Like it really is. So hopefully he's able to have that because he had one random year where he had like 1,400 yards, right? Or something like that. It was a crazy year, but like, could he have something like that in 17 games? Who knows?
2020 in 16 game schedule, he played 15 games. With Atlanta, he had 1,374 yards and 9 touchdowns on 90 catches. And then the next year is when he had the mental situation, stepped away from the team, had to get right with his family. I believe he talked about that. He did an interview with Buck Rising right after he got signed last offseason that was awesome. And it's about as real as they can get. Where I guess family got robbed and he got messed up a little bit, just kind of like off, and had to step away, and then he got suspended. So that was his last full season. Like you thought the trajectory for Calvin Ridley after 2020, before that weird 21 season, was like, this dude is going to be a star, a star. And then he had, a season, a year and a half away from the game, still comes back and puts back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with the Jags and then with the Titans. And I think Ridley is going to improve, because last year he had 120 targets, Ryan, and 64 catches on 120 targets. That's not good.
It's not
good.
It's not
no.
great, yeah.
The connection was off. We talked about this. He had a game last year where he had 8 targets, 0 catches. It was just disgusting and about as gross as it could be. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he and Cam Ward already have a better connection and have something that Will Levis and Calvin Ridley never got to last year, which was just the the timing. We saw a big bomb that they threw to each other. I think we had that video, Ryan. I don't know if you've seen that. But we've got
the one on Twitter of him.
Yeah. Just this deep ball. And, from my perspective, when I first saw it from the sideline leave Cam Ward's hands, like I thought Ridley overthrown. And then, but it was almost like Ridley was throttling his route down until the ball was in the air to then go create more separation and run away, and ran right underneath it. And it was perfect. And so I think, I think that's where Calvin Ridley's number one on this list, and the ability to just have a get out of jail card on an offensive drive, and just how many they could have 3, 4, 40+ yard touchdowns from Cam to Calvin this year.
100%. Yeah. If you just have 1 or 2 of those, then we're talking about those production being, kind of more towards what we're talking about as far as like a career year type of thing. Yeah,
they probably missed 3 or 4 of those last season that were there. They were there.
Can I say one thing about your list? The fact that you had the 2 rookies on there of Gunnar Helm and Io Manor. I think that your list gives me a lot more optimism that Calvin Ridley is going to be number 1 on this list, because if both of those guys step up and Tyler Lockett is just solid to good, right? Like another secondary pass catcher, and let's say Van Jefferson is like an okay wide receiver 4 or something in this offense, then that wide receiver room looks a lot better than maybe a lot of people are anticipating, right? Like if Io Manor and Gunnar Helm are both a top 10 overall most important player on Tennessee in 2025, that gives me now, you're like, okay, Calvin is now going to have attention off of him, because now you have to worry about that 6'2", 210-pound rookie receiver, that 6'5", 250-something pound tight end, and Gunnar Helm working in the middle of the field. Plus you have Tyler Lockett, who's been doing it a long time. That gives me a lot more optimism potentially that Calvin Ridley does have that type of year, because that means that all eyes cannot be on Calvin Ridley all the time.
100%. So let's ask this question, because Ryan, you kind of talked about it, wanting to kind of dive into it. What's more important for Cam Ward's rookie season? Is it the weapons or the protection? And I know you were going to kind of calculate golf score, our rankings here. So what's more important for Cam Ward's rookie season, weapons or protection? The Bone and Joint Institute can protect you from having that injury reoccur. Injuries in life as adults are major inconveniences. They just screw up your work, your family, your life, your social life, anything you want to do. If you're in pain is not as fun to go after. But the Bone and Joint Institute can help you get healthy, stay healthy, and be on that road to recovery from whatever injury that life throws to you. Maybe it's that old injury from back in the day that creeps back up that happens from time to time. So make sure that you can trust the Bone and Joint Institute, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care, online in Franklin, boneandjointtn.org.
Make sure that you are sharing the show, folks. But after the fact, if you could please go give a 5-star Google review. Remember, if you guys want to tell us something great about A to Z Sports, you can obviously put it in that 5-star Google review. If you want to have some constructive criticism, totally fine. Just make sure that it is attached to a 5-star review. Make sure you hit that after the show today.
All right, so Ryan, you're doing your golf scores, right? Because we asked the
Yes.
question: protection or weapons? What's more important for Cam Ward's rookie season? I'll let you keep on doing your math
Yep.
because it's just straight up protection from the chat. Like, I don't see a weapons yet. Like it is, and we've got what is this? 100 million per 10 million% from Jason protection. So. Draylen, I think history of young quarterbacks proves the answer is protection. So Kenneth adds in protection. So it's a clean slate, not one answer for the weapons. So, I mean, I kind of feel like our rankings probably reflect that as well. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was, again, just doing the quick math. So on yours, okay, obviously you had Calvin Ridley like I did as the number one player, but you had Cushenberry number 2, you had JC number 3, you had Dan Moore number 4, you had Zeitler number 6, and you had Skoronski number 7. So in that ranking, if we're just talking about skill position versus pass protection, okay, and just protection up front in general, you had 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 going to the offensive line. You had 1, 5, 8, 9, and 10, right? Yeah. So overall, I'll put it like this to keep it as easy as possible, not even doing a golf score. 5 of your top 7 players on this list were offensive linemen.
Yep.
5 of my top 8 players were offensive linemen. Right,
yeah, like you had Lockett slid in there, right?
Yes, I had Dan Moore Jr. at number 2. I had Lloyd Cushenberry at 3, J.C. Latham at 4, I had Zeitler at 6, and I had Skoronski at 8. So 5 of my top 8 are on the offensive line. 5 of your top 7 are on the offensive line. So,
and we both had Ridley and Pollard 1 and 5.
Yes. Yep. So a couple skill position players on top of that, obviously, but overall, offensive line dominated this conversation. I mean, for you, is 5 out of 7. What's that? That is 71%. 5 out of 8 is what, 63% or something like that. Like I'm trying to remember my math days. I used to be a math teacher. If people didn't realize that. So
I love like real life math, but that is not real life math that I would be able to. I
am correct, by the way. I just fact checked myself. It is 71%, and then 0.625, which will round up to 63 for 5 out of 8. So there we go. I got it right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I used to know percentages pretty well based on free throws.
Yeah.
Free throw percentage.
I was kind of more of a completion percentage for quarterbacks. So I'd be like, oh, I know what 7 out of 11 is. That's 63%, man. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this exercise made me feel more optimistic about the Titans offense in a weird way. And I didn't expect that going into it. I went into it not even knowing, I guess, I'll kind of filibuster for a second. What's the one thing you learned throughout ranking these 10 players? Because mine is that I feel more optimistic about the supporting cast for Cam Ward, at least from like the starters, like depth, completely different conversation. Because if one of these offensive linemen goes down, that throws, obviously both of us have a high importance ranking on the starting O-line. The depth is tough. So I guess, are you ready to answer what you learned most from the exercise?
Yeah. I think what I learned most is, one, it validated my priors of thinking that pass protection is more important than just overall receiver play. I think overall, but also I think that might have been like, there's some bias there, right? Like when we're ranking, obviously there's bias. This is a subjective, not an objective conversation, right? So I think in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm not surprised that I ranked offensive linemen a little bit higher than some wide receivers on the list. But also, Austin, I think that this does speak to, when's the last time you felt this confident about an offensive line for the Tennessee Titans?
2020.
Yeah, because it wasn't like Dan Moore Jr. is the only one where I'm like, Dan Moore Jr. is the only one where I'm like, I don't really know what to expect from Dan Moore Jr. as far as like that volatility. But like, as long as Lloyd Cushenberry's healthy, I feel good about J.C. Latham. I feel good about Lloyd Cushenberry. I feel good about Skoronski taking a jump. And I feel good about Kevin Zeitler bringing stability. So like, this offensive line is at least, again, there's some teams that are like the Philadelphia Eagles have had the best offensive line in the NFL last year. And the Cleveland Browns have had some really good offensive lines over the last 4 or 5 years. And there's some teams that just will have better offensive lines than the Tennessee Titans. But compared to what the Titans have been the last couple years and what they could potentially be, because all this is, again, this is projection, but like what they could be in 2025, I feel a lot better about Cam Ward staying upright than I feel like I'll put it like this. If I drop Cam Ward on the last year's team with Nicholas Petit-Frere playing a lot of reps at right tackle, do you feel good about him behind that offensive line last year? I certainly don't. I feel better about the situation he's in now.
And I think the more I separate from last year, the more I feel like, again, throwing Will Levis under the bus, but the sack numbers from Mason Rudolph dropbacks to Will Levis dropbacks are astonishing. And most of the time, it's the same O-line, right? And Levis gets sacked like 9 times more frequently than Mason Rudolph. So I think Cam Ward is likely to be sacked, not to the same level as Levis, but more than Rudolph. You know, I think Mason Rudolph is just really good at not getting sacked. Like that was one of his that was one of his super skills. Like Mason Rudolph, super skilled. Don't get sacked. Got it. Self-preservation.
Well, and I think people need to understand that Cam Ward's going to take some sacks next year, but it's being able to distinguish between what is the offensive line's issues and what is Cam Ward just being a little bit of a hero ball rookie quarterback.
Totally.
Like, those things are going to happen, right? There is a reality, guys, where there's like, I don't want to put a number on it, but let's say there might be 10 sacks next year that are on Cam Ward that are not on the offensive line. It's just like you held the ball for 6.5 seconds. Like at some point, the offensive line is going to break down, and Cam Ward is going to need to understand, and it's going to happen at some point because it did happen a little bit last year at Miami, but because I think his average time to throw was like 2.95 seconds or something like that. So like he held on to the ball a good amount of time last year. But what's going to happen this year is there's going to be a moment for Cam Ward where he understands, oh man, this isn't college, right? Like I need to go get the ball out a little bit faster here. Like this is not it, because everybody has that. For all the great plays Pat Mahomes has, you know what he's also been doing the last couple of years more than he did early in his career? Getting the ball out faster, right? Like Pat Mahomes has done that. Tacked short to intermediate a whole lot more. So there's going to be a marriage that needs to happen between Cam Ward easing it back a little bit and understanding that there are some limitations because you're playing with bigger, faster, more athletic defenders in front of you now. Totally.
So, I think the offensive line has a chance to be a kind of like the no middle class, a pass or fail. I think this offensive line is more likely to pass this year than it is to fail, which is a big deal for your rookie quarterback, Cam Ward. So, and then that also allows for more of these weapons to get involved. I think Calvin Ridley is a get open fast type of guy and can help you alleviate some of that. Maybe Dan Moore isn't the greatest left tackle, which we're not expecting to be, but Ridley's ability to get open fast and throw fast will help Dan Moore, will help Skoronski, will help some of those, whoever the center may be, pinch hitting for Lloyd Cushenberry until he's fully ready to go. So, all right, let's go ahead and wrap up this conversation, this show today with a little bit of shade. Let's throw some shade on this Tuesday. Do I have some shade for our own Buck Rising? Here we go. Shout out to Wilson County Hyundai in Lebanon, online at wilsoncountyhyundai.com to help you save money on that new car. Throwing shade. If you got shade, throw it in the chat. I am throwing shade at Buck. We will find out more. I got to pull up his article that he wrote yesterday at azsports.com that I gave him the headline for, but I disagree with it completely. Completely disagree with the headline I wrote. So do you have any shade, Ryan, as I pull up Buck's article?
Yeah, it's a little shade. It's not anything too serious, and I'm not like out there just throwing people under the bus, right? But I used to, in a former life, I was a teacher before I was full-time media. I made the transition like 5 or 6 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark. And my shade, because this is not just where my kids go to school thing, this is everywhere. For whatever reason, throughout the year, for months, there's no events at schools. Like just parents are coming in. They're just going along their way and they're trying to get through the year. And then all of a sudden, Austin, because this is the last week of school for my daughter who's in pre-K right now, right? Over the last week and a half, there's been like 6 different events, right? Where they're all just putting all these events in like a 2-week span. And, my daughter's 4, right? So she's like, Dad, come to all of these events. And I'm like, babe, it's actually impossible for me
There's
to be at all
so
these
many.
events. I believe it or not, contrary to what my mother-in-law thinks, Daddy does work, like I do work, which is hilarious, right? So, I would love, I've been there for a couple different things. I've been at most of her things actually, but can we just spread the stuff out a little bit? Like maybe one event event a month or something like that for the school. Like let's just spread out the wealth a little bit. I don't need 6 different events in a 2-week span, so I feel like a bad dad because I couldn't get to all 6 events.
That's crazy. That's insane.
Oh, it's been hard. It's been. I don't want to say horrible. It's horrible. It's not the right word, but like, so there was a Father's Day thing, which is cool, but there's like 2 different end of the year parties. There was a book fair. Like, I'm just like, dude, like this is just too much.
Look, one into your party, Father's Day thing, absolutely. Mother's Day thing, absolutely. The great, right? Book fair, do it at a different time. Like screw the book fair, right? The book fair is a piece you can just drop wherever you want to that fits in the schedule. Like fill a gap with a book fair, and one into your thing, boom, fixed.
That's
done,
it.
right?
Yeah.
And you can tell
just one thing a month. Well, and again, the last 2 weeks, if there was like 2 events, I'd be like, that's cool. 2 events. We make that happen. But yeah, at some point I'm just like, guys, like I want to be at every one of these things because I want to be a good father, but also I do need to work. Like I just have to work. I don't know what else to say about it. I have to work. So
yeah. And you can tell your mother-in-law that you do plenty of work, more than I honestly can understand how you can get done. So
dude, she is like I'll tell my wife, like I remember when I got this job and I was already in the media space, but I'm like, yeah, I write a certain amount of articles each week. I do a certain amount of video work, like all that type of stuff. And every time my mother-in-law is like calling, like she'll call me or ask me to do something like in the middle of the day. And she'll be like, and then I'll be like, I have to work. And she's like, oh, you're still working? Like, yes, I have the same schedule as pretty much every other person. Actually, even more because I work at nights a lot of the times, getting articles prepped and ready for the next day, and it's just like, oh man, okay, we're not working. It's okay, babe. It's okay.
That's hilarious. Justin, I got some shade on my Irish skin. We'll be looking for it when I'm on vacation, 3 days on the beach. Vanessa's throwing shade at flies. Eric says shade on negative people who just hate their life and make everyone miserable around them. Speaking of Buck Rising. Let's go ahead and flip to my shade on the show today. Buck's headline: Cam Ward's 6-part documentary raises first red flag for the Titans' #1 overall draft pick. And then he said in his subtitle, his deck, Ryan, it just says, which I gave him the headline to fit his opinion. So I wrote the headline, but Buck wrote his own deck. His own deck just says, and get off my lawn.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So, yes, we're on Shade Jeff. So here's my shade to Buck, because Buck comes in and says, quarterback Cam Ward will be the subject of a 6-part sports documentary titled Zero Star, the Cam Ward story, according to Variety, acquired by the free streaming service Tubi. The series will chronicle Ward's journey from zero-star high school recruit to Tennessee Titans #1 draft pick in the draft. And Buck says, it's the latest example of a marketing Titans quarterback before their NFL production warrants it. And he goes on to give examples of, Cam Ward's journey is compelling, but not docuseries worthy, at least until now. And Buck says that 6 parts for Cam Ward is the same amount of parts that Michael Jordan's Last Dance was. And it's 3 times the parts of Tiger Woods' documentary that was just 2 parts. And I'm like, Buck, dude, like I was laughing my ass off during the Titans content chat when Buck was fuming at this and says, he tweeted like, this isn't quite the Levis Mayo commercials, but this is more exposure than he's earned. And I'm like, dude, like for one, I don't think it's Cam Ward's decision. Like I want 6 parts because MJ had 6 parts. I don't think that's Cam Ward's decision. I'm pretty sure it's Tubi's. And also my guess is that Cam Ward is probably mostly done with the work on his part for this docuseries because it comes out in September, which means it needs to be pretty much wrapped up with filming and editing fairly soon after training camp starts. I don't think Cam Ward's doing much right now. I honestly think Cam Ward's probably going to be the least interviewed person of this documentary. He's probably has a sit down during the draft process to cover everything pre-draft and then probably a sit down at some point once he was with the Titans, and maybe they do it after the first week of training camp or now, and he has his, hey, I'm here. Here's what the NFL feels like so far. And that's probably it. The other people will be Cam Ward's family, Cam Ward's friends, his former coaches at different schools and high school, recruiting analysts. That's what Cam Ward doesn't have to do that much work for this.
No.
So I think, doesn't. Buck, get off my lawn. Terrible take. Terrible take with this. So my shade is at Buck.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't read this article, and now I want to actually go read it, even though you kind of just, you gave me kind of the synopsis pretty good there. But, I mean, also, like, Cam didn't pitch the idea, right? Yeah. So, like, it's like he's like, yeah, do a biography about me or a documentary about me. Do it. Yeah, that's kind of funny. I'm sympathetic to the conversation of like, hey guys, let's let him ball out and then we could do the documentary. But also, like, that's not a red flag on Cam Ward. Like, maybe you have a red flag over like the people that wanted to make this production possible, I guess. I don't know, but yeah. I mean,
here's the last thing I'll say about this. We've talked for now a month and a half about how nobody's talked about the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Mm-hmm. And then the 6-part docuseries comes out and Buck's like, what? 6 episodes? That's ridiculous. Get off my lawn. So pick one. And I saw Buck tweet about this. He's doing Fox Sports Radio weekend hits. And he's like, we're about to talk Cam Ward. I'm sure this is going to be my last shift of Fox Sports Radio. So you know it. And then you just flip-flopped all over the place. So Buck, pick a lane or pick a lawn to sit on and yell at kids from. So
and also the last thing I'll say is, Buck, we probably didn't, not we, but like just a general public perspective, we probably didn't talk enough about Cam Ward during the draft because everyone's just talking about Shedeur Sanders. So like, you know, Cam, it's not like Cam has just been, it's not like Cam has been at a nauseum of like from a national perspective where like everyone's just constantly talking about, is he the most, I don't want to say least talked about, but he's one of the more least talked about number 1 overall draft picks that I've seen over the last few years. Like, I feel like not a ton of people are talking about him from a national perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it's who is the guy that Trayvon Walker?
Oh yeah. No one talked about him. Yeah.
It's like Luke Jokel, Trayvon Walker, Cam Ward. Least talked about number 1 overall picks.
Yes.
So, all right, that's it for us.
Luke Jokel was like over a decade ago, so it's been a little bit. Yeah,
been a while. Yeah. Oh man! All right, that's it for us on this Tuesday. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you again for a Wednesday morning. Buck is not live tonight for primetime. That would be Easton Freeze stepping in for Buck on Tuesdays moving forward. So check out what Easton has to offer tonight for primetime. I'm sure you can go check primetime last night with Buck. We probably talked about his Cam Ward docuseries opinion. So we'll catch you later. Like the show and see you guys on a Wednesday. Appreciate it as always.